Final Furlong podcast is proudly brought to you by Jeff Banks Bet. Get up to £500 refunded as real money for new Jeff Banks online accounts after your first month of betting. Use promo code FFP500 at jeffbanks.bet.
Thank you for joining us on the Final Furlong podcast. Great to have your company as we go through some of the big stories, key talking points, and big horses from the weekend's racing in the company of former jockeys William Kennedy and George Gorman, beginning with Jonbon, who won his 17th out of 20 starts, his 9th Grade 1 win. William Kennedy, after he's won the Clarence House Chase and been chopped from 2-1 into 5-4 with Jeff Banks Bet for the Queen Mother Champion Chase, is now the time that people finally start putting some respect on Jonbon's name.
Good evening. Well, I'd like to think so. Just people are always trying to get him beat, picking holes in him, trying to get him beat. His jumping early in his career was his antics before, his attitude. Aidan Coleman, who used to ride this horse, always believed in him, always said how good he was, had arguments with numerous people after races who were crabbing him and questioning, but what about his attitude? And what all the horse does is keep winning. What did you say he's been beat? What's he been beat?
3 times in 17 starts.
And where did he finish on all 3 occasions?
Second.
Yeah. I mean, what do we want from the horse? I literally stood at Warwick yesterday and I said to Ed Whittaker, who took the picture, I don't know if you've seen that picture of him jumping the last at Ascot the other day. Amazing. And I said, what a picture. And he said, oh yeah, but Energa means 11. He was even, someone else was crabbing him, and I was thinking, oh my God, what is the horse going to do? Like, yeah, he deserves to be favourite, and if I was riding, I wouldn't ride anything else in the Champion Chase.
Ooh, that's a bold call. To be fair, I'd say bold call. I don't know who you'd be trying to ride, George. He is the one they all have to beat. I know that Aidan has said on this show that he's absolutely convinced that he's not quite as good at Cheltenham for whatever reason as he is elsewhere. But is it going to matter? Like, the Moors had a horse who couldn't win at Cheltenham a few years ago and then ended up winning the Champion Chase anyway because he was the classiest horse in the race, and that's all it came down to. And you look at this year's field, you've got arguably a doubtful stare in the King George who might drop back and try and blow their heads off in Ile-Francais. Doubtful he runs here. I'd say they'll go Ryanair. El Fabiolo, where is he? Possibly headed to the DRF. Marie Nationale, not good enough from all known form that we've seen. Banbridge almost certainly going Ryanair. Solness still can't understand how he won the Grade 1. Jello, the Venetia Williams horses are stink at the moment. Like, that 50-1 about Quilixios is looking all right. He's 40s now. It's such a bad division. He probably will end up finishing second or third. This comes down to, can Energamine take a significant step forward from this on possibly softer ground in the Champion Chase? Or is Gaelic Warrior going to continue the trend of previous season's Arkle winners having a good record? Because unless one of those two takes a serious step up, if Jonbon runs his race, he just wins, surely, George.
Yeah, I think so I'd agree with you. Analogy is probably fairly apt here in that it has been a hot division for a few years. You're looking now, Jonbon's turning into a solid horse. I'd have been one of the people that would have been out to get him. Not every start, but like that, I try and find little chinks in his armour, and I've given up. I gave up at the start of this year. I think he's looking more and more solid. He's jumping. Like Ascot's a jumping test. I mean, you have to jump going downhill. The way he shifted 3 out just to sort of set himself right was, the action of like a headstrong horse who might have been his own worst enemy in the past. And Ergamine probably can take a step forward. We're talking Willie Mullins, like they are. He's going to improve again for the run, and he probably would improve again on soft ground. But it's not going to be enough to get to Jonbon. The only horse that probably can beat him is Gaelic Warrior. And in terms of who you're going to ride the solid one. Because Gaelic Warrior could win or he could pull up, couldn't he? Yeah, I think it's far past time that we started giving him a bit more respect, because at the moment he's certainly the most reliably top-class horse in the division.
So my attitude for the weekend was I started to convince myself that Energamine was going to beat him, because in his prep runs for Cheltenham, Jonbon has been a little bit underwhelming. He was underwhelming in his prep run over novice hurdles. He was very underwhelming in that novice chase match race that he almost lost. And he obviously got beaten in this race when it was run at Cheltenham a year ago. But you go back down through his form, his only defeats have come at the hands of arguably the greatest champion hurdler we've seen since Istabrak, and we can debate all day long about my beloved Hurricane Fly and Faugheen and all these others, but Constitution Hill is just an absolute machine who destroys everything in his path. He lost to El Fabiolo, who had bolted up in the Irish Arkle, and maybe if they'd ridden him a little bit differently in the Arkle, Jonbon would have got closer. But that novice season, El Fabiolo was astonishingly good. And I really like James Bone. I think he's a very talented jockey, but he tried to ride him like Aidan Coleman rode him, as opposed to how Nico had ridden him on his two previous starts, where Nico had been quite aggressive on him and was throwing him into fences. And this is something that George and Katie talked about quite in depth on the podcast last year, that it was the change in jockey style didn't really help. James was riding him quiet and it seemed to confuse him. But irrespective of how he was ridden, the horse made two errors that a normal horse would pull up from. See El Fabiolo in the Champion Chase as an example, and he still nearly won. I'm like George. I was trying to take him on. I've given up. There's no point. I don't see anything that can beat him. And even if Gaelic Warrior was to go and win by 10 lengths in his next run, do you actually really trust him to back that up at Cheltenham? Do you really think he's going to go and perform to his best at the festival? Maybe he will, but he's not a horse you can trust, whereas you can trust Jonbon. Is there anything that appeals to you at a big price that you would fear, William?
No, not that I'd fear, but Calixios at a big price to nick some money. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do think so. But no. They're not going to. Where are they going to run the French horse? Where is he going to run? It
has to be Ryanair, surely.
Yeah, I think so. But there's talk about this, isn't it? But I can't see. I can't see. I just do not think. I think the difference in 3 and 2 mile, he might have gone a right good gallop, but there's a huge difference. He went this really good gallop in a King George, got everything sort of under pressure. They just won't be. He won't get 2 milers under that pressure.
Yeah.
They'll just be in behind him. They'll be right up behind him. It's a completely different ball game.
Yeah, all you're going to do is set it up for a horse like Jonbon, whereas against the 3 mile chases, it's that little bit easier. I do wonder, though, George, maybe William's got a point. Maybe what's going to happen is James Reevely, Noel George, Amanda Zetterholm, they're just going to look at the 2 divisions and go, well, we don't fancy him over the extended 3 mile 2.5. He's a bleeder, so let's not go for the Gold Cup. So then you're looking at Ryanair Chase or Champion Chase, and it's going to come down to the strength of your opponents. And you've basically got one horse to beat in the Queen Mother Champion Chase in Jonbon, who's never won at the Cheltenham Festival. And in the Ryanair, you've just seen Protektorat put up. I mean, maybe Windsor suits a horse on the front end, and particularly with the horse who was pinging his fences the way he was. But my goodness, that was an extraordinary performance. Does Protektorat just go and win back-to-back Ryanairs, or is something going to emerge like Ile Francais?
I just touched quickly on the Ile Francais dropping into Champion Chase. Of course, it can be done. Like it's been done in the past. One man famously sort of stepped back into that division and just somehow did manage to get them all under pressure. But I don't know if that's maybe where you would have had a lot more 2.5 milers in the Champion Chase back then, because there was no Ryanair. If that would have had an impact on that at all, more runners, more traffic, just sort of suits a horse maybe that bounce out, go a good gallop and stays well. But Ile Francais, and then completely blanked. What was the other question?
Is Protektorat now just going to be the one they all have to beat in the Ryanair after a dominant performance at Windsor?
On what you were saying just there, I think Windsor really is going to be a track that does suit front runners like that. The only I would say is that bend going away from the stand, he had to give away a lot of the ground he had made up, just sort of even to make it round the bend where it was quite tight. But it did just look like a horse that got loose on the front, didn't it? He unsettled J-Lo early in the race, where he sort of half tried to go with him and got lit up and hit a fence, but it's the first fence out of however many. I can't think that has everything to do with the winning distance, but I'd say it's a little it's probably a little bit of both. Probably a little bit the track suits front runners and suits him, and a little bit he's obviously a very good horse. He would be my favourite for the Ryanair at this moment in time. Yeah.
So he would be my favourite for the race as well. Now there's a horse I'll mention in a couple of minutes, and we'll do a championship race special with Paul Ferguson next week after Trials Day for Cheltenham. Katie Young and George will be here on Monday to break down the big stories we've seen in the horses, and then Paul Ferguson with the first discount for the Weatherby's Cheltenham Festival betting guide, and it's the biggest discount you get on any of the podcasts, so make sure you're watching the Final Furlong podcast, and make sure you subscribe to the Final Furlong podcast on YouTube as well. Paul Ferguson and the Cheltenham Festival betting guide returning to the Final Furlong podcast early next week. But I am genuinely perplexed as to why Protektorat is 12-1 for the Ryanair Chase with Jeff Banks bet, to the point that I was almost going to message the traders and say, lads, is this a mistake? And I went, well, if it is a mistake, let's just put it out there anyway and hope that the listeners can get advantage. Use your promo code FFP500, because I think that 12-1 is bonkers, particularly considering Banbridge, whatever about the trip, he's ground dependent. If he doesn't get his ground, he's vulnerable. If he gets good ground, he'd be very dangerous. Factophile, it seems pretty certain they want to go for the Gold Cup with him. That's why Spillane Tower is in this race and not the Gold Cup. Gaelic Warrior, Champion Chase, or this. El Fabiola has been talked about for this race, but again, who knows which way they're going. Whereas this is absolutely the race Protektorat is going to go for, William. And yet, the reigning champion is 12-1 after a wide margin win.
Yeah, that's actually, I haven't looked at what price he is with anybody else, but we only talk about Jeff Banks best, so let's leave it at that. Yeah. But that is crazy. Yeah. That was an unbelievable performance. Like Harry was going 2 mile pace on him early, and he was just towing him along, and fence to fence, like the last down the back, he absolutely just galloped into it and didn't touch a twig. Like, he was so good. And then that big long bend turned now the back straight. It must be two and a half furlongs long from the last fence down the back to the first in the straight. But that bend just allowed Harry to sort of, well, I think he gave Charlie Deutsch a little bit of a sniff of it around halfway around that bend. But once he sort of gave him a squeeze down to 3 out, he just absolutely opened up and was electric over the last 3. Then, yeah, it was a really, I think the thing where I'm not sure the horse is going to get all the credit he deserves for that performance yesterday, simply because we don't know the track.
Yeah,
I think when they put up a performance on a track, like, God, he's a long way in front there, or God, he's, but not knowing really what Windsor is, it's hard to sort of decide how good a performance it was. But visually, just watching the speed he went early and then to pick up like he did, it was, I thought it was an incredible performance.
I absolutely agree. Is there anything else in the race that particularly interests you now, George? That 12-1 is an industry best price. I've checked it. He's generally 8-1. There's a couple of firms going 10s. The only one going 12-1 is Jeff Banks Bet. And if you fancy that, use your promo code FFP500. You're eligible for 10% back on any net losses after your first month of betting with Jeff Banks Bet. You can stream British and Irish racing on the Jeff Banks app and the Jeff Banks website. Best odds guaranteed. All the goodies are in there as well. But more importantly, 12-1 about Lizzie Kelly's Cheltenham nap for last year, Protektorat. And I would be amazed if she's not napping him up again at 12-1. That's a crazy price.
If there was another one, 25-1 about Founder 50 is probably a bit of an overreaction. Like, that was too bad to be true the last day. He'll be one of the more experienced of the novices going into it by the time it comes round, and he's run well at the festival before. He's obviously in Champion Chase as well, but I can't imagine he'd be going there. I'd imagine they'd go for the 2.5 mile option. So that he'd be one of my more interesting ones, a bigger price there. In the Champion Chase itself, just I didn't mention it just now. Obviously, Calixios is probably it would certainly be a decent each way anti-post bet if you're inclined that way, because he's not in the Ryanair, he's going there. And on a similar vein, fun each way bet has been for many years, and probably should still remain until he proves differently. Captain Guinness. Forgetting about him still. He won't go anywhere else. 40-1. And you'll probably have 5-6 runners on the day. You'll be one of them. I wouldn't mind having last year's winner running at me for 40-1 to sneak into the first half of a 6-runner race. I think between the two of them, that might be the way to play it, not knowing where Gaelic Warrior is going to go.
I think that's not a bad shout at all, actually, about Captain Guinness. I'm still clinging on to my... I can't remember if it was 66-1 or 50-1. I remember that Quilixios, after he beat Marine Nationale first time up, wasn't even priced up for the Champion Chase by Jeff Banks. That's how highly he regarded my tipping of him and how highly he regarded that piece of form. But it's such a bad division and that is the race they're going to go for. He could easily sneak into the first two, but that's second or third. But that's what you're playing for. You're playing for second or third if Jonbon stands up and performs. We saw Appreciated get back to winning ways for the first time since his novice chase campaign, when he was taking on El Fabiolo back in 2022 in the Horse and Jockey. It's a race that's been used by Allaho as a stepping stone to the Ryanair Chase. It was used by Don Cossack and Sizing John to prep for the Gold Cup. None of us really think that's a horse who's going to be impactful at Cheltenham, and really it just casts a further raised eyebrow over the division itself. The fact that Appreciated is able to go and win in the style that he did, because for all the Blood Destiny shaped reasonably well, you're not exactly queuing up to back any of those horses next, are you, George?
No, I'd say this was probably his day, wasn't it? Like he hasn't even been entered in any of the open company races at Cheltenham. But like this didn't come out of nowhere. Like he hasn't won since his novice campaign, but he has had that odd run where you just see the little bit of him left. I was convinced this was his trip. I did actually back him. I say I've been waiting for this since he split Fast or Slow and World Cup winner in the John Durkin. Was it April 20? Not April. Sorry.
He's come back last year. Last year's John Durkin.
Last year, yeah.
Yeah.
Last season, we should say.
Oh yeah, last season.
There have been the odd run like that from him where I think he was beat sort of 5 lengths by Fast or Slow at the Punchestown Festival last year. Like this, you could see this was coming. He just had to find the right option, and this is sort of one of those races for Willie Mullins, isn't it? Where one of his second string, sort of on the fringes of the first string, get their opportunity to win a race, and I'm sure he'll find a way to pick up another one of these sort of Grade 2 open company middle distance sort of intermediate distance races. But job done. It's done in great style. That's the only thing. I did think this was his trip, but I tell you what, he wasn't holding on to much between sort of from 6 out onwards. Like he was flat out and trying to convince the horse he wasn't. Like he might just get further now, so maybe there will be options for him up in trip going forwards.
Yeah, I was of the opinion that this was the upper echelon of his stamina, but actually he probably does want a little bit further now. I don't know what it says. Like, I'm a huge admirer of Willie Mullins, and well done to him for all the success, and it's great to see, but geez, it's pretty bad when it's a 1, 2, 3 for him in this race. You've got a bumper winner, champion bumper winner in Kilcrut falling at the back of the telly, and nobody else says anything to get into the race. And dearie, we'll talk about Caldwell Potter in a second. Phil Dorr. Jesus. I don't know why it aligned this weekend that so many of those ex-Caldwell horses were running this weekend. Jazzy Maddie, Phil Dorr, Imagine, Caldwell Potter. All of them getting lapped. Johnny Ward has raised an eyebrow about the excuses given for the sale of the Caldwell horses. So let's phrase it a different way. Greatest fire sale in the history of racing. Unbelievable touch for whatever the reason was as to why those horses were sold. Dearie me, unbelievable stuff. And I don't know what. Siri doesn't even understand. She's like, I don't know what you're talking about. No one does.
What are we on about, Emmet? Phil Dorr was a great buy. He won that race at Thurles, listed Chase. He was only rated £38 higher than the only other runner. He gave him £3. Yeah,
what am I talking about? If
you put 40 of your finest pounds on him, you could have walked home with £41.
1 whole pound? My goodness, what a touch.
So if you just did that another 100,000 times, made your money back.
Well, I mean, look, we'll save Lulamba for a second. We'll skip to Caldwell Potter. By the way, the horse that I'm interested in for the Ryanair Chase, I'll expand more on this with Paul Ferguson next week, is Embassy Gardens. All right, the boys have not started calling the men in white coats, and neither of them scoffed or threw something at the camera. Willie was very much of the opinion that he thinks, well, from what I could gather, they seem to think that they were making a mistake with him, that stamina is not necessarily his forte. Intermediate trips are more his thing. He was really good on New Year's Day. Remember, I was kind of a basket case back then, so I wasn't really watching the racing at all that day, but I've watched it back since. It's a good performance. If you believe that Monty Starr is as good as many people are telling you he is, then he's taking care of him pretty comfortably, and this trip should be ideal for him. I'd imagine this will be his race. 25-1 is his price with Jeff Banks Bet, and you can take advantage of that 25-1. I'm not necessarily tipping him. I'm just saying I think he could end up being Willie Mullins' main player in that race.
It's a great race. I mean, we talk about Protektorat, and I was really impressed with that performance, and we're saying it's a disgrace he's 12-1. But this is it's a seriously competitive race. This,
yeah,
and it could be the maybe not the, like there'll be a standout Gold Cup winner and obviously Galloping and all that, but like this could be the most competitive race of the festival.
Yeah, what
because they're trying to maybe just avoid the Gold Cup at 1 or 2.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think Factifal will run here. I think he'd win it. I think he'd win it doing handstands.
Yeah, no, I think he'll go for the Gold Cup, and I think he should go for the Gold Cup.
I agree with you.
But then Spillane's Tower is running here because of that.
Yeah.
I think Banbridge will run here.
Agreed. If he gets his good ground. If he doesn't get good ground, they won't run him at all.
He'll get good ground. I mean, he's. I mean, when was the last time Ryanair wasn't ran on good ground? You're probably going
last year.
Last year,
yeah. Yeah. Do you remember they ran him? There was a big talk about how they were going to take him out, and then they let him loose anyway, and it was a disaster.
I think actually on the ground at Cheltenham last year, sort of later to a point I just had mulling in my head there. How have we gone with Embassy Gardens from he can't get beat on this ground over 4 mile at the festival last year to suddenly, we actually got 2.5 mile on decent grounds this thing.
It's amazing how
he's 9 years old and he suddenly got much quicker.
Yeah, but it is amazing how these horses can make fools of you. Like they were adamant.
You can say that again.
Lizzie Kelly's sister works with Willie Mullins, and Lizzie was doing a piece of. She was invited to ride out there, and the horse she was given was Embassy Gardens, and fell in love with them instantly. Now she's ridden some very good horses over the years, and as Louis Stewart was pointing out on Talksport 2 last week, just because a horse does a great piece of work, or just because a horse is great in a racecourse gallop, doesn't mean that they're actually going to translate that to the track. And his experience is riding multiple Group 1 winners in pieces of work, and they were just straight trash. But then you ride them on the track, it's like, oh my God, this thing's a machine. And it can be the opposite way around.
And Constitution Hill proved that if you do a bad bit of work, doesn't mean you're going to run bad on the track either, does it? So
straight facts.
It's interesting you say that as well.
They certainly make fools of you, that is for sure.
Lizzie Kelly had him right the whole time, because you don't tend to fall in love with 4 milers in a piece of work.
No, Lizzie was saying he should be going intermediate trip. She was surprised he wasn't going for the Bearing Bingham that year.
So Lizzie Kelly should be signed on as Willie Mullins' new racing manager.
Ruby Walsh
the
out.
Kevin Blake of Willie Mullins.
Oh wait, does that mean she has to go around telling everybody how great the racing league is? Well, the biggest problem facing the BHA is the racing league. There could be a breakaway racing league if the BHA are careful. Yeah, of course. I believe, is it coming back for a 5th year, or is it done? Have they stuck a fork in it?
Quiet, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very quiet.
Very quiet.
It's very, very quiet, George, on the racing league front, and it'll be very, very quiet even after it if they do go ahead with it this year. Anyway, I think he's really interesting because, look, he's a Willie Mullins sort of unexposed horse. He has bled in the past, but over this trip he's completely unexposed. So he's a very interesting one for me. And Lizzie was of the opinion 2 years ago that intermediate trips would be more his thing. turns out that now Willie Mullins is in agreement. So I'm interested in him. With that whole division, Spillane Tower, Banbridge, obviously, possibly Gaelic Warrior, although it looks like Champion Chase for him, possibly El Fabiolo. Hardly the two of them will go for that race. Does an Urgameen step up and trip, or do you try and win a third Champion Chase with him? I think you kind of have to try and win the third Champion Chase. Grey Dawning could drop back to this distance instead. Although, do you do that when you've got Protektorat? It's fascinating. It's really, really... And there's a whole host of big-priced horses. Heartwood, Jungle Boogie, Stage Star, if he was to bounce back to something like that. Jello is not a bad horse. It's just Venetia Williams horses are running terribly at the moment, and that's why... I mean, Royal Pagaille pulled up at Haydock. That tells you how bad her horses are running at the moment. So... It's
the two of them, they Heartwood and Liberty Hunter would be very interesting if they're decided to go there rather than the handicap route. The problem with them, with backing them at this stage, is they could go that like off a big weight in a handicap. Still, they're not. That's not out of the realms of possibility for them.
Yeah.
So it's they're like I just point out when I mentioned those are two of my favourite horses in training. I just couldn't be backing them at this stage while they still have handicaps as options.
No, I would agree with you.
Maybe once the handicap entries come out, we'll have more of an idea. But with those sort of horses, you tend to just stick them in to give yourself the option, don't you?
I'm saying this with respect, and I'm saying it with not quite love, but respect, and in the name of banter. But it's quite the timeline when Venetia Williams' winner at the weekend comes in the hands of David Maxwell. Come on, David! And he gave him a peach of a ride too. Ross Millar was highlighting the use of his fingers extended, arms extended to get the horse to jump to his absolute maximum. There's a beautiful picture of him jumping the last on the At the Races site, the At the Races Twitter. When you click it open, it's
his hands around his ears.
Thing of absolute beauty. Thing of absolute beauty. Well done, David Maxwell. Well done. And I'm not saying that in a condescending or patronizing manner.
No, I know. Well, I hope you're not.
No, not at all. I like David. I like David a lot. And listen,
that's one of our jockeys. I won't have anything said against David.
Yeah.
Here's the point I'll make. It's your choice whether or not you want to bet on him.
Yeah, 100%.
It's also your choice whether or not you want to bet against him. And there are times where you can back Brendan Powell on a 5-1 shot, and David Maxwell's got the odds-on favourite, and you're better off backing Brendan Powell because he's got the stronger hands, and he'll time it that little bit better. And sometimes these things can work your way. You don't need to be betting on him. And any person who's brave enough to go and ride a horse at 40 miles an hour around fences and any British or Irish racecourse has got massive respect from me. So fair play to the guy, and he pumps a lot of money into the game as well. Right, enough fawning over David Maxwell. Well done to him. It is just quite something that's the winner Venetia Williams gets, and Royal Pagaille and Jello are falling out the back of the telly. Caldwell Potter. Guys, what the hell? Like, and we had a brief conversation before we went on air. If this horse had stayed with Gordon Elliott and was progressing in a similar way, we'd all just be going, that wasn't much of a grade 1 novice hurdle last season, and he'll probably win some grade 3 or a Welsh Grand National at some point. That's not what happened. €730,000 was forked out on this fella, and he's getting beaten in a novice, admittedly good novice chase, but Gidley Park had a heart problem, and he murdered him. Like, this just... In the world of football, George, you're wearing an Arsenal top. So I had cousins here at the weekend. We're watching Liverpool. And my cousin Sean starts going, "Oh, that Darwin Nunez, he's absolute stink. He's absolutely rubbish. What a waste of money. What were Liverpool thinking?" And suddenly I'm able to go, in your face. But he's kind of right. Like, Nunez did cost an absolute fortune. He wasn't performing. And yeah, great. He scored the 2 goals at the weekend, and that's brilliant. But like, that is his job. That's what we do in football. If a manager gets the tactics wrong, if he gets his team selection wrong, if the team's not performing for him, they get slated. If a player's not producing the goods, particularly one that cost an awful lot of money, they get slated. And for some reason in racing, oh no, you can't do that. Ross Millar dared to criticise a jockey a couple of weeks ago and question whether or not he's quite as good over fences these days as he was before. That's his opinion. He's entitled to express it. And he expressed it in an eloquent way. He got murdered for it. Oh, you can't say, oh, how dare you? This guy was an Olympic event rider. He knows what he's talking about. And if he wants to express an opinion, he's entitled to express an opinion. You can't be fawning over jockeys and saying that was an incredible ride, but then not criticize one when they get it wrong. And you can't talk about what a brilliant training performance this was, or how the incredible sourcing to get this horse, if you're then not going to criticize when a trainer gets it wrong or the people who sourced the horse got it wrong. And if you want us to get excited about the fact that people are spending big money on horses, well, guess what the opposite of that is? People questioning why that big money was spent on a horse in the first place. This is natural in every other sport, and for some reason in racing, no, you couldn't dare, George Gorman.
Yeah, look, Caldwell Potter, the money thing is, it's to a regular person, it's an obscene amount of money. Of course it is, and look at it in the cold light of day. Novice ever worth that much? Probably not. But what a horse is worth, anyone in bloodstock will tell you, what a horse is worth is what someone's willing to pay for them. It's as simple as that. It's who's there on the day, how badly they want the horse. It's not what the value of the horse is, it's how badly do you want it. And this set of connections really wanted this horse. Have they overpaid for him? Maybe. They've got a nice horse in their yard. They wanted to get in their yard.
Yes. The answer is yes.
But with every run over fences, like that was on RPRs, that was another step forward. I'd be inclined to agree with that. Or it's his best, like, actual jumping display. I think he's certainly going the right way. Is he going to be a Grade 1 chaser? Probably not. Plenty of fun with him, and with pockets as deep as theirs, they can afford to spend that much for a bit of fun. Like, let's not forget, Gidley Park's not done a whole lot wrong in his career. Like, I think he got beat at Cheltenham. Before that, he had won bumper 3 hurdle races in a row. Nothing got anywhere near him in the bumper in the first 2 hurdle races. So a horse ran him to within half a length in a Grade 2 novice hurdle at Cheltenham, was only lucky place. Good horse, this, and blew out at Cheltenham as many horses had. Chase debut off 255 days off the track. A bit of a blow. 2 bad days in a good career. And form for him here. I think Gidley Park's a horse we've got to be taking on board going forward. There's still a chance he could turn into a Grade 1 novice chaser.
Oh, yeah.
We shouldn't forget that. There's still
Johnny
a good chance
Burke.
he could. And,
Sorry, go on, George.
No. What was Johnny Burke saying?
I text Johnny Burke after this horse won first time over hurdles down at Exeter. And Johnny Burke wouldn't be a man to get very excited. And he said to me, this is an absolute airplane. And he obviously was a no-brainer for Johnny with the opportunity he got from Fergal O'Brien. But it really hurt him to lose this horse.
Wow.
It was a no-brainer, but he thought this, he really believes this is a proper horse, and obviously he has had his issue. Actually, funny enough, I didn't hear the actual conversation. I wasn't eavesdropping, but I did hear Nicky Henderson asking Harry Fry at Windsor today what had they done to rectify the heart issue. I didn't hear the actual answer or what was said, but it was interesting to hear Nicky speak to Harry about that. But yeah, Johnny Burke, yeah, airplane, and he's not a man to give a horse a big boost like that. So
I've done Cheltenham previews with Johnny. He's not someone to hype a horse up just for the sake of it.
I think he knows he's pretty good. And he didn't I don't think he jumped great the other day. Like he was he a little bit guessy for me now at 1 or 2, and he's a big horse and he galloped into a couple, and I think there's better to come from him as well. Yeah,
I'd agree. Yeah. I was doing a betting feature for this race on Sky Sports Racing on Friday with Dave Orton. The 2 outsiders were the 2 that there was absolutely no money for whatsoever. All the money was for you wear it well who was being extremely well backed, and Caldwell Potter had been pretty well backed the week of the race, 5-2. There was an attitude that he wouldn't turn up, and then there was absolute panic. But nobody wanted a bean on Gidley Park, and yet he manages to go and perform in the way he did. And just to give you an example of how racing can be a real funny old game, like Paul Nicholls has only had 2 winners from his last 20 runners. He's second in the Trainers' Championship. He's had 315 runners this season. Dan Skelton's had 667. Dan's on £2 million in prize money. Paul Nicholls on 1.3. Like, it's not like Nicholls has fallen off the way. Oh, he's done. He's no longer a top trainer. No, that's not it. That's not it at all. He's still right there. Might very well end up being champion trainer this season. Who knows? But he just doesn't seem to have the quality that he had before. And yet he's still producing the winners and still getting his owners big prize money. Probably why Max McNeil is happy to be taking photographs with him in Barbados, George. Like...
I was actually just about to say, I saw someone said something on Twitter, and I was going to say, each to their own. I've got absolutely no problem with it. But someone put a picture of Nicholls being interviewed up and said, nice to hear that your 800 grand horse is going to be a nice horse, but not a superstar, while your trainer clearly has the glow of the Caribbean still in his face.
A golden Barbados tan.
I did see that.
Quite amusing, but look, he's always gone to Barbados this time of year, and we should be said it could well be flu jab time for Nicholls.
It is flu jab time for him. It is.
And that would be, if you were ever going to go to Barbados, it'd be when half a yard are going easy because they've just had their flu jab. I've got no problem with it whatsoever. It's, at the end of the day, it's a job, and some people choose to work 365 days a year. There's no problem with that. Some people, that takes a toll on their mental and physical health, and they should be encouraged to take a holiday if they want.
If I could be in Barbados and if I could bring the whole Final Furlong podcast team with me, believe me, I would be doing that. Live from Barbados, it's our National Hunt preview. We would do that if the opportunity was there. So fair play to him. But
you'd have to tranquilise Gary Moore and lock him in a crate to get him to Barbados. But Nicholls is having going there once a year. Do you know what I mean? It's different. Different people work different ways, and there's no right or wrong answer. I don't like that when people are having a go at him for having been on holiday. Right? He's a human being, and he's got a very good set of staff to run the yard when he's not there.
Yeah,
but that's not to say it wasn't amusing.
Oh, it's a great... Listen, there's sarcasm and humor, and if we don't have sarcasm and humor, then what's the point? You don't have to take what he's saying literally. But as far as I understand, that is the situation. It's flu jab season, so there's not a whole lot to do. So they go on holidays. Fine.
Yeah. He's not the only trainer, right? But I'm not going to name them. But I know a lot of trainers that after Christmas do it, and yeah.
Yeah. Now, whether or not you want to base the metrics for how good a trainer is on the Trainers' Championship or the metrics on do you have Grade 1 winners in your yard, and it is slightly concerning that a yard of that size, Harry Cobden would say on Shallow Hurdle Day, this is probably the only Grade 1 horse we've got in the whole yard, and then that horse gets duffed. That's a slight concern.
It will turn around. You've just shown the stats. He's second in the championship with not the horses he hasn't had in the past, the home names, and not banging in the winners like he has in the past either. But yet he's still second. Like he is brilliant trainer, brilliant at placing his horses. Having a little bit of a lull at the moment, but has he got many to compete with at Cheltenham? He's saying he's got a few. Don't know what he's got, but he'll pull one out of the fire from somewhere. I'm sure of it. But it will turn around. He'll get a new owner coming in with big money to spend, and it'll come back. It just will.
If you've got Ferguson, Jed Mason, Fred Dunn, Delahaye, Max McNeil, Ella, if you've got those people backing you, you're going to get good horses.
Yeah, exactly. It'll turn.
Yeah, it's cyclical, isn't it? It's all cyclical. Yeah. And I'd actually applaud Paul Nicholls for the only thing he's really changed in his methods is that is that he tends to not take as many horses to Cheltenham. Like, he could very easily go, I'm going to keep buying these horses that I think are Gold Cup horses, but because I know I can't beat Willie Mullins, I'm going to get them all handicapped and try and win the ultimate with them. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's kept ploughing on and going, there's a Grade 1 horse, I'm going to find out if it's a Grade 1 horse. He hasn't changed like his commitment to finding excellence, whereas a lot of trainers would have got disheartened with not being able to compete and going, well, I need festival winners, so I'm going to turn all these horses that I hope were going to be Grade 1 horses, I'm going to turn into handicappers. Like, he could very easily have done that.
Yeah.
A lot of trainers would.
It's a fine line.
Most of the trainers in Ireland do, because they have no choice. They can't compete unless they run their best horses in handicaps.
Well, this is the flip side of it. You've got a multitude of trainers that are winning big races in Britain. In Ireland, if you're not called Willie Mullins... In Ireland, if you're not called Willie Mullins, Gordon Elliott, Henry de Bromhead or Gavin Cromwell, you're probably not going to be winning a big race, which is a concern, to say the least. Gidley Park, just briefly for you, William, where would you go with them?
Oh, God. Well, he's got to run again somewhere. I don't know where he's going to go, but like I say, I was impressed by him, but he's got to get a little bit more match practice before you go to Cheltenham. That is for sure. I don't know where exactly he will go, but has Harry suggested anything, or has he said, or
I don't think there was talk about it. Brian Carver was talking about potentially, like, the attitude beforehand being he's not going to have enough pace for 2 miles, and then, actually he does. He's got a bigger engine than they thought. And like, I would have thought stamina would have been his big thing. Certainly as a novice hurdler, they ran him in the potato race after all, so they obviously felt the same way themselves. But no, there is more speed there, so there's more of an option. I can't see him beating Sergino.
No, he's not. He's certainly not going to the Arkle.
He shouldn't go up too much. He's going to go up, but he shouldn't go up too much. Maybe he would be okay for the... Is it a 0 to 50, the Turner's Handicap Chase now? Or whatever it's called these days? Yeah, so I presume you run him there. Give him a shout. But interesting horse, and it's good. Another British contender for Cheltenham.
Yeah, good.
We're running out of horses to find for Cheltenham over here in Ireland. I don't know what's going on. All of a sudden, it's a massive turnaround. The crisis in British racing might have flipped to crisis in Irish racing. And that might very well have been extended with the Triumph Hurdle. I'm fascinated to hear what George Gorman's got to say about this, because George is heavily involved in the Gary Moore yard, and so you would know more about Mondo Man than the vast majority of pundits out there. He was obviously a very, very good flat horse, and he's been bought for a fortune. There's quite a few horses that have been purchased to go flat racing that cost quite a bit of money. One of them I think we're going to see this weekend for Nicky Henderson, the German Derby winner. But the betting with Jeff Banks for the Triumph Hurdle now is headed by Lulamba at 6-4. Jeez, more on that to come. East India Doc, who we'll see at Cheltenham at the weekend, 5-1. Hello Neighbour for the Cromwell team. We talked about him extensively before his debut. A lot of talk about him, 6-1. Lady Vega Allen, 8s. Mondo Man is 16s. Palladium, who we're going to see this week, apparently 20-1. So what did you, first of all, how is Mondo Man since the race? What did you make of the race overall, George?
Yeah, Mondo Man's come out of it fine. The race was he did just about everything wrong, didn't he? But he took his gelding quite hard, I think, when he came in earlier, and since then it's been as most would. But it's been quite difficult to sort of get any consistency into him since then. Like, we've sort of been on the back foot all the way. He ran a hell of a race. He did everything wrong. Probably the worst track in the country to do it at. Like, you sort of the hill, going down the hill gets you quite lazy horses running away with you, and then having to make his move up the hill like he did. Then the horse was given perfect seam up the inner while we were stuck on the outside of him. I thought there's every reason to think we could finish a lot closer to the Nicky horse next time. But of course, we know with Nicky, Sergino's first run last year was a tough to watch. I think he leaves plenty to do with his juveniles first time out, Nicky, anyway, and we've sort of been forced to with ours. So it's one of those sort of. I know we'll take a big step forward, but so probably will he as well. Like, I certainly wouldn't discount him come Cheltenham. Like, he's very highly rated on the flat after all. But because I know what I know about ours and how much I expect him to come on for that, it's a little hard to get too excited about the Henderson horse, especially given I can't underrate how much things came around the outside in the Derham horse, half expecting everyone to come to the far rail, and it's just given Lulamba sort of golden highway up the inner in the end. But yeah, I said I wouldn't be backing this horse at 6-4 for the Triumph anyway. I'd almost don't know what price ours is, but 5-1.
You're 16 with Jeff Banks.
Isn't it?
Yeah, you're 16 with Jeff Banks bet for Mondo Man. Now, I take all of that on board, William, and I think it's fascinating.
Big difference in prices.
Yeah, massive difference in price. I think there's a lot of positives there to take with Mondo Man. Obviously, he's going to improve for that run. Gary Moore's a genius. He had horse place in the Triumph Hurdle last season, for example, and he does very, very well with juveniles. However, William, Nicky Henderson is an absolute wizard. Like, it's Willie Mullins and Nicky Henderson. They're the Harry Potters of the juvenile hurdlers. And then they get these horses to go on and do exceptionally well. Maybe the Gandalfs is probably better of juvenile hurdlers. Like, they're just wizards when it comes to this. He's giving £10 to Mondo Man, and he's pulling away from him at the end. Like, this was just ridiculously impressive.
Yeah, really impressive. Went through the race really quite professionally as well, which I liked. On the whole, jumped good. Nico looked for a second like he was going to get stuck into him, and then realised, oh, actually, I don't need to. And yeah, he gave him a squeeze in that from the last of the line, and he pulled away nicely. I take nothing away from Gary's horse. I think he done, like I say, he did. George said he done plenty wrong. He was good at one or two. The one at the bottom of the hill, he bored down the hill, very keen, and that's a nasty little hurdle. He was good in his feet. He hit one or two hurdles, and what I really liked about Gary's horse is you get a lot of, especially those top quality flat horses, why they don't make hurdlers is they hit a hurdle and they go, ooh, ow. It's a bit like a footballer playing rugby. And he wrapped a couple of hurdles and just got down and got stuck back into it. I really like that about him. So yeah, there's improvement to come from both horses, but yeah, you can't get away from Nicky's, because, like you say, I think he'll take a step forward, and he just looked a lovely big horse as well. He's exciting, another exciting juvenile for the owners and Nicky to be going to war with.
It's a cracking division. We still don't really know what Willie Mullins has yet, and I'm sure.
Well, Willie the who?
Oh Jesus! Speaking of, Adam Mills is back in the podcast tomorrow.
He's actually outsider of the lot for the Triumph now.
I might as well be.
He's outside.
We have devoted enough time to that horse, and we shall waste no more on him, unless he's able to sneak into the Fred Winter off a decent weight, and then suddenly we might have a raised eyebrow.
Well, if I can, I'll just add, it's an important point to make that Nicky's horse was giving away £10 here, but he was giving away £10 because he's won over hurdles already.
Yeah.
Not last season, in October. And our horse is making his hurdles debut and hasn't run since July.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Do you know, for every positive you can think for one, you find another positive for the other. I wouldn't have them that far apart in the betting, is all I'm going to say. Nicky's horse could be the next Sergino. Ours could be 3 to 4. Hopefully not the rest of it. But, yeah.
I mean, he's run well. Like, he's gone close. Been beaten 8.5 lengths at Royal Ascot by Caldwell. That's not bad. There's nothing wrong with that at all. The defeat to behind Saucy was at the Grand Prix de Paris. Yeah, that's not bad either. I mean, Saucy's gone close.
He's rated 111.
He's one of the highest rated flat horses to go jumping for quite a while. I'm amazed I'm amazed you got him for the price you got him for. Like 520 is a lot of money, but
Having said that, I'd say he's probably the most expensive horse we've had. Certainly the most expensive jumper.
Possibly, yeah, possibly. But there's a lot to like about him, and he's bound to improve from that. It just look at what he's gone up against. He has to rematch with Lulamba and possibly off level weights the next day. You've got East India Doc, who's been very impressive. Hello Neighbour was winning a Grade 2 in his hurdling debut. We'll see him at the Dublin Racing Festival next. And then Palladium is entered for a couple of races. I think they're all on Sky this week, but he's due out very, very soon. A 1.4 million euro purchase. And Willie Mullins is bound to unleash something, which hopefully Adam Mills will be able to fill us in more on, because he'll have the inside track and he'll know all of those ex-French horses like the back of his hand as well. So we'll talk more about that on the Final Furlong podcast in the next episode with Adam. But fascinating division, 6-4 Lulamba with Jeff Banks bet for the Triumph Hurdle, and you can't really argue with it. A couple of horses to race through very, very quickly before we wrap it up, folks. Take No Chances gets the better of Cargeese. She was very, very keen. She was not really playing ball in the parade ring beforehand. She was crazy short for the Mare's Hurdle before the race, William. And she has drifted back out now to a more realistic, I think, and it's +5s. I'll check it again. I'm pretty sure it might be more like 7-1, 8-1. Is she going to be able to turn it around in a quick enough time? 6-1 Cargeese with Jeff Banks bet for the Mare's Hurdle. Does that appeal to you at all? Or are we now headed to a world where Brighter Days Ahead stays on track for the Mare's Hurdle, Lossiemouth runs against Constitution Hill this weekend, and then it's definitively decided, oh, well, we can't beat him in the Champion Hurdle, so we're going for the Mares, in which case they're the big two and nobody else counts?
Well, I mean, isn't that the truth of it, really? But if both of those decide to take on Constitution Hill, then Cargeese hadn't ran 259 days. Willie Mullins, don't get me wrong, he definitely has horses win first time out for a season. But I would say there is a really, really high percentage of Willie Mullins' horses improve for the first run. Like I'm talking 85 to 90%, I'd say. They improve. And she was done plenty wrong, too keen, like you said, in the paddock beforehand. She's going to be a different ball game the next day, I'm sure of it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I just still think it's disappointing that she's beaten by that caliber of a rival when she's getting weight from her. Like, she should have won, George, but for all that Ruby Walsh was highlighting beforehand in an interview with Matt Chapman on ITV Racing, that she wasn't exactly behaving herself. So maybe it was just a bit much for her, but I don't see how she turns around this performance to go and beat a horse we're told is absolutely headed to the Mare's Hurdle, Brighter Days Ahead.
Yeah, to be honest, on her best day, I don't think she's beating Brighter Days Ahead anyway.
No, nor me.
I don't see her as I only see her as a contender for the Mare's Hurdle if Brighter Days Ahead and Lossiemouth don't show up, to be honest. And even then, if they could get Jade de Grugy back, I don't know if he'd run both of them.
Where is she?
Jade de Grugy to beat Cargeese. But she was injured. They said she'd be back out after Christmas. So hopefully, if she's not had further setbacks, we'll see her hopefully before the Dublin Racing Festival. But she will stay over hurdles this year now, because obviously there's no point going chasing with her now. I'm sort of stuck between two camps of this run from Cargeese. I watched it initially. I went, well, she's pulled too hard. She'll come on for the run. She'll be grand. She'll be back to normal next time out. There's also done a great job of limiting how keen she was. She could have looked a lot freer with a less talented jockey. He's so good at sitting quiet on one that's pulling. Very similar to how Ruby used to as well. You have to look quite closely to see one's actually pulling with either of them. But, the slight problem I have, and it only just popped into my head there as Will was talking, is if 90% of them come on for the run, my rule of thumb would be the 10% of the yard that would have themselves fit first time out would be the ones that are real keen. Those horses, the hot, buzzy horses get themselves fit. And I hope that's not the case with her, because in that case, she might have given her running. But I'd be more inclined to lead towards the former. It's worth mentioning that however little you do with them, keen horses get themselves fit. Like they're always doing too much by definition. They're spending more time in the red per lot than more relaxed horses. Therefore, they get fitter quicker. It's just worth mentioning that she won't have gone there 50% fit. She'll be somewhere between 90% fit minimum.
Yeah, not peak physical condition, but good enough to go and run her race. I would just remember what Adam Mills was saying towards the end of last season on the show, and he was a huge Gargizi fan. Very concerned about her this season because she's such a diminutive filly. How would she train on? How would she cope with the older division? It's a vintage crop of juvenile hurdlers from last season. Sergino, we don't really know how good Majbur is yet, and his novice chase debut form has taken a bit of a knock, but he's very exciting, and we're excited to see what he's going to do in the Irish Arkle.
I would say, Emmet, on that, I heard Ruby Walsh say on a podcast the other day, I didn't see any of the preliminaries for this, I will say, so I'm just going off what I saw in the race. Ruby Walsh did say she's grown and strengthened a lot this year, which I think it was Rory was on with him and said like she would have needed to have done. Basically, he would have been concerned about her if she hadn't. So she has grown a lot. It might be the case that the body's grown and the engine hasn't, and it might take her a season to adapt to that. There's also that. It's a possibility, but it's worth mentioning she has grown. She's not the as far as Ruby's told us, she's not the very small speedy horse we saw last year.
Well, this is what's fascinating about the juvenile division now, because the horses that I would have been watching 20 years ago and that William would have been riding 10 years ago were ex-flat horses. Nowadays, it's national hunt bred types from France because the flat horses can't be got, with the exception of Palladium and Mondo Man. And so those horses are going to develop physically more precociously, but at the same time, they will have more longevity to go, as opposed to flat horses who are conditioned to race pretty quickly. So intriguing. A couple of horses to race up before we go. Does Paul Nicholls have the mare's novice hurdle winner in Jubilee Alpha? William?
Look, she went through the race really nicely. If you'd have stopped this race between the second last and asked me the question, I might have been keener to say yes. But jumped the last well, and then Harry had to kind of get stuck in. Didn't pull away from the three and behind. Won by 3.5 lengths maybe in the end. I don't know exactly, but it wasn't 6 or 7 like she looked like she was going to as she approached the last. I thought Harry would eke out an inch of rain and she'd pull away and be really impressive. And she done it plenty well enough, but I'd be worried that something else might just be too good for her in the mares at Cheltenham. Yeah.
I did hear Lydia and Ruby talking about this. When was the last time Paul Nicholls had a really talented mare? They couldn't think of one. And I can't think of one either. Matata was all right. You had Lorena. That was a disaster. Then as soon as she went back to Willie Mullins, she won another graded race.
Yeah.
Did nothing for Nicholls. So it's not really his forte. But there was a quote from him afterwards that we've got a few nice chances for Cheltenham and she's one of them.
Oh. Yeah. I mean, you'd be disappointed if he didn't say that, though, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And finally, 3-card brag. Is Ella McNeil going to be celebrating a Grand National win? I don't see a price from Jeff Banks Bet. So Jeff clearly is like, no. But I thought he won that beginner's. It was a decent beginner's chase. I thought he won it pretty well, George.
I'm afraid I can talk to you about the other one, but I missed this race and the replay is not available online.
Oh my goodness. William Kennedy, bail him out.
I'll bail you out. It was a good race. I thought this horse was impressive. I thought he jumped good. He was really quick over his obstacles. That's what I liked about him. He was quite sharp and accurate. He was a big old horse. Olympic Man, he he took a few fences back home with him. So, I mean, he was disappointing. I mean, he's got a massive engine, but he's got to get his jumping together. I wondered was fences going to make a man of him, because he used to do a little bit the same over a hurdle, and got away with it and progressed nicely. And I thought, oh, when he gets a fence, he'll hit one or two and he'll make a man of him. But he's still got a bit to find. But I could definitely see 3 Card Bragg running at Aintree and running a big race.
No odds from Jeff Banks for the Grand National.
What mark is he on?
That's a good question. Was it 136 or is that his time form figure?
Well, he's going to have to go up to get in off that, isn't he?
Well, I would normally agree with you about that. I'm not so sure what the quality of the Grand National is going to be. I'm not 100%. He's 147 now. He'll have no problem getting in.
Oh yeah, he's all right. If that, yeah,
he's it'll be easy for him. No problem. 16-1. I don't know why there's no betting from Jeff. Let's say 16-1 with Jeff Banks bet, but it wasn't showing up on the screen. Grand National is the race for him. The traditionalists will be furious with Gordon's quote. He'll probably head straight for the English National now. Oh, how dare you, Gordon? It's supposed to be Grand National and Grand National only, just like it's supposed to be the Gold Cup, not the Cheltenham Gold Cup. Because, they're the things to be worried about and concerned about. There's nothing else happening in people's lives or in the world. Any horses to follow from the weekend that we haven't mentioned? Really pleased to see Kerry Lee's Nemean Lion win. Hope that horse goes on to more success.
Oh, yeah.
Great success. Well done to them. William, anybody else we should be watching out for?
Disappointing from where I was sitting.
Disappointing for the Salver connections, but we'll give Kerry Lee the big up on this show, and Salver, I'm sure, will get a compensation for his fall in the Raquel and that good run the other day sooner rather than later. George, do you have anything else to mention?
I just want to touch quickly on the horse that won the novice handicap chase at Windsor on Friday, Heracles Westwood. Actually, the marker he sort of put down. I know he was receiving a lot of weight from Deafening Silence, but Deafening Silence for me is one of those horses. He's a bit of a marker as well as like lifetime ambition, sort of the horses you've got to beat to prove your place in the novice division. But particularly with this horse, the way he won very comfortably. The horse he beat last time at Newbury is a horse of ours called Moulin Clermont, who is off 115 now. And basically him and Heracles Westwood pulled well clear of the third that day. Our horse was having his second run back from over a year off the track. So sort of in a roundabouts way, Heracles Westwood is obviously going places for Warren Greytracks. I'd be really interested to see what Moulin Clermont can do over 2-4, 2-6 next time out. Because that's a big form boost for a horse that, like I said, was only having his second run the last day after over a year off. And actually he was when he was last seen, he was second off 1-2-2 at Newbury over hurdles. So he got dropped £5 for the time off, for being injured, and then got dropped another £2 for making a chase debut where he obviously just needed the run. Then finished second to Heracles Westwood. So I think the two of those horses from that Newbury race are well worth watching going forward.
Both of them going into the tracker. William Kennedy, for you?
You had mentioned you were going to have a little word about James's gate.
Yeah.
I mean, he's really interesting. He's got to jump a bit better, but he was considering the bad mistake of the last and a couple of niggly ones. He's done really well to get back up and win, hasn't he?
Yeah, I thought Mark gave him a really ice cool ride, and I thought he was great on him after the mistake at the last. I suspect he is one with tons in hand. I don't think he's going to go for the race that his owner sponsors, but I think he will run that day at Cheltenham, and he'll go for the Coral Cup. And that's a race that Martin Brazel's got a good record in, and Martin Brazel with handicappers at Cheltenham is a man to be feared. And this horse would be very, very high on my list for that race. Very, very high on the list. Fascinated to see. Mark will obviously be pot committed for JP. Maybe JJ will be available. Maybe he will. Maybe the Munir team will have something for it. I don't know. But James's Gate will be very, very interesting. You could get him, get someone to take a bit of weight off his back either. He's going to be a really interesting runner. And Forty Coats ran a big race at the weekend too, and he'd beaten him prior to that performance as well. And Henry Bromhead's horses aren't running great either, so I thought that run from 40 Coats was actually probably one to mark up. This is a serious horse, and he was a really good bumper horse for Willie Mullins back in the day, placed in a champion bumper. I like that James's Gate a lot. He's very, very high on the list of handicap horses to follow. Right, that's it. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Final Furlong podcast. Probably should have asked you this earlier. Maybe I did. Maybe I've completely forgotten about it. Can't remember. Brain no work good. But if you haven't hit the like button, please hit it now. If you enjoyed the contribution from George Gorman, hit like. If you enjoyed the contribution from William Kennedy, hit the like button. And hopefully we'll have the two boys back on the show very, very soon. George is back here next week because he'll be here with Katie Young as we break down Trials Day at Cheltenham. Paul Ferguson is here the day after as we talk about some of the championship horses to look forward to for the Cheltenham Festival. Adam Mills is on the podcast tomorrow talking about the novice hurdlers, one of the most confusing divisions we've seen for quite some time, and hopefully we'll have William back on the show again very, very soon. When's your next big racecourse appearance, William?
Leicester tomorrow for Hands and Heels race. Got to go there and walk the track with the up-and-coming conditions and amateurs of the future.
Nice. I'm not a big fan of those Hands and Heels races. I am for the development of younger jockeys, but keep the pro cush. It's badly needed. Right, from George Gorman, William Kennedy, and me, Emmet Kennedy, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Look after yourself and each other. We'll talk to you again very, very soon on the Final Furlong podcast. God bless.
The Final Furlong podcast is proudly brought to you by Jeff Banks Bet. Get up to £500 refunded as real money for new Jeff Banks online accounts after your first month of betting. Use promo code FFP500 at jeffbanks.bet.